My name is Celandine Rowe, and I was the forgotten one. At Christmas dinner last year, everyone in my family received beautifully wrapped gifts. Except me. It wasn't a mistake. No one gasped, no one apologized. They just moved on, like my empty hands weren't even worth noticing. But I didn't cry. I didn't flinch. Because what they didn't know, what they never bothered to ask, was that I had already given myself the best gift of all. Not just a new home, not just a six-figure bonus from one of the most respected tech firms in the country. What I gave myself was something they could never take back, the power to walk away from people who never saw me. And that night, I finally used it. I grew up in a house that praised golden boys and ignored quiet girls. My brother Grant was the golden boy, star quarterback, prom king, early acceptance to Stanford. He walked into every room like it owed him applause, and usually it gave it. I was the background, not the disappointment, not the rebel. Just forgettable. My earliest memory of being invisible was at age 10, when Grant got a brand new bike and I got socks. My mom said it was because girls don't ride bikes anyway. But I did. I rode the neighbor's hand-me-down after she threw it out, until the tires burst. Things didn't get better with age. At 13, I sat silently on the stairs, while my parents and my brother celebrated his latest report card. Straight A's, of course. I had straight A's, too. But no one asked, no one noticed. And when I did speak, it was like tossing words into a black hole. By 16, I had stopped trying to belong. I poured myself into books, into coding, into understanding how systems worked. Because at least systems made sense. At school, I joined the tech club, not because it was cool, but because it was mine. The logic, the rules, the control. It gave me something I never had at home, stability. Then came the Thanksgiving dinner from hell. My father stood up to toast Grant's entrepreneurial spirit and vision. He was launching a business funded entirely by our parents. My mother beamed. Then she turned to me and added, "We just hope Celandine finds a steady job, maybe something safe, like clerical work." And Uncle chuckled. "I hear the deli down the street is hiring cashiers." The whole table laughed. I didn't. Because that week, I had just received a full scholarship to one of the top tech programs in New York City. Tuition, housing, stipend, all covered. I hadn't told anyone yet. Not because I was hiding it, but because I knew it wouldn't matter to them. I left home a month later with a single suitcase and a silent promise. I will never come back to beg for their approval. They hadn't seen me in years, and I was going to make sure that when they did, they wouldn't recognize the woman I had become. New York didn't welcome me. It swallowed me whole. I landed in the city with a scholarship and a suitcase full of hand-me-downs. My dorm room was barely larger than a closet, and my first night there, I cried into a borrowed pillow. The walls were thin. Someone next door was blasting music. Another person was vomiting in the hallway. It wasn't the dream. It was the grind. But the grind suited me. I took classes during the day and cleaned hotel rooms at night. Weekends were for tutoring underclassmen in Python or troubleshooting laptop issues for extra cash. I didn't party. I didn't date. I worked. I worked because I knew the only way to outrun the version of me they had written off was to become someone they could no longer afford to ignore. And slowly, I did. By junior year, I was interning at a cybersecurity firm downtown. I was the only woman on the floor, the only one under 30, and the only person who didn't ask for help. I figured things out myself. They respected that. By the end of the summer, they offered me a part-time job to stay on while I finished school. I accepted. And I never looked back. I moved out of the dorms and into a shared apartment with two other women in Brooklyn who were also clawing their way into something better. Rent was brutal, the heat barely worked, and we had to take turns plunging the bathroom sink. But it was ours. For the first time in my life, I belonged somewhere. Graduation came with honors, job offers, and no one in the crowd cheering for me, except for my two roommates, who held up a sign made out of a pizza box. "Go Celandine, go build the damn thing." And I did. I joined the same firm full-time and rose fast. Too fast, maybe. I wasn't trying to climb the ladder. I was building my own. My code became essential to the firm's infrastructure. When a major bank was hacked in early 2020, I designed the patch. When a government contractor needed a custom security suite, I built it from scratch. By 28, I was making six figures. By 30, I was leading projects. And by 31, I closed a multi-year licensing deal with a European financial firm that paid me a bonus large enough to make my bank account blink twice before confirming it had gone through. I didn't call home. I didn't tell them. Not because I was petty, because I had learned. Their silence was never about distance. It was about disinterest. They didn't ask. So I stopped offering. Instead, I took a piece of that bonus and bought a condo in Boston. 2 bedrooms, minimalist design, stainless steel everything, and floor-to-ceiling windows that made the city's skyline feel like part of the furniture. I moved in mid-December, a week before Christmas. My friends came over with Thai takeout and cheap wine, and we sat on the floor because I hadn't bought furniture yet. Someone gave me a candle shaped like a dragon, and another gifted a mug that read, "Just because you're quiet doesn't mean you're weak." We toasted to new beginnings. Lisa, my loudest and kindest friend, raised her glass and said, "To Celandine, the quiet one who roared." I smiled, not because I needed the praise, but because I needed the reminder. And that's when my phone buzzed. It was a text from Marla, my cousin. We hadn't spoken in nearly a decade. "Hey," it read, "your mom wants to know if you'll come home for Christmas." I stared at it for a long time. Not "come visit," not "we miss you," just "come home." I showed it to Lisa. "You going?" she asked. I didn't answer right away, but later that night, standing by the window with the skyline stretching out in front of me, like a secret I'd kept too long, I whispered the truth out loud. "I think I have to," not because they deserved it, but because I needed to see with my own eyes what I'd left behind and what I'd become. I drove up to Massachusetts Avenue in the early morning mist, the kind that makes everything look like it's holding its breath. The 6-hour drive felt shorter than expected, maybe because I was rehearsing what I'd say, or maybe because I knew I wouldn't say any of it. The house looked smaller than I remembered. Sagging gutters, paint peeling around the windows, weeds curling over the driveway like they'd claimed it. There was still a plastic Santa on the roof, the same one from when I was 12, only now it was missing a boot. I stood on the porch with my overnight bag in one hand and a tin of cookies I'd picked up out of obligation in the other. My hand hovered over the doorbell longer than I'd admit. When I finally pressed it, the chime sounded tired. Fitting. The door opened to my mother's face, surprised, then studied, then stiffly polite. "Well," she said, "you look different." "I am," I replied. She pulled me into a one-armed hug that lasted exactly 1 second longer than necessary. Inside, the house smelled exactly the same, like lemon polish, old upholstery, and disappointment. The living room was full. Cousins, uncles, people I hadn't seen since I left. Conversation stopped as I stepped in, like someone had turned down the volume. A voice from the kitchen broke the silence. "Hey, look who's here!" Grant, of course. He came out beaming, one arm around his wife's shoulders, the other gesturing to her swollen belly. "Everyone, this is Mia. Your future niece or nephew's in there," he said, patting her stomach. Polite applause. I offered a smile. "Congratulations." "Still working with computers or whatever?" he asked, voice light but laced with condescension. "I work in cybersecurity," I replied. "Enterprise-level AI defense." He let out a low whistle. "Wow! Still doing the techie basement thing, huh?" I didn't respond, didn't need to. Dinner was announced with a clap from my mother. "Let's eat before it gets cold. Celandine, your old room is now Grant's office, so we've made up the couch for you." Of course they had. We sat down for dinner. I was placed at the end of the table, next to the kitchen door, practically in the hallway. I didn't complain. I didn't say anything at all. Grant held court like always, explaining some vague startup idea involving revolutionary media architecture. It was all buzzwords and ego. "I just need the capital to launch," he said. 200,000 should get us rolling." My father nodded. "We'll figure something out." My mother patted his hand. "Family helps family." I chewed a forkful of overcooked turkey and said nothing. After dinner, my mom handed me a scratchy blanket and gestured to the couch. I lay there under the flicker of the hallway light, listening to their laughter upstairs. I didn't cry. I didn't even blink. Christmas morning came like a scene out of a commercial. Mia and Grant bounded down the stairs, tearing into presents with glee. Boxes were stacked high, ribbons flew, everyone oohed and awed over the gifts I'd brought, carefully selected, personalized, and wrapped with handwritten notes. Then it came to my turn, except it didn't. "Oh no," my mother said, far too loudly. "Celandine, we completely forgot." Grant laughed. "Just like the good old days. Don't cry this time, sis." And that was it. Something inside me stilled. Not rage, not hurt, just clarity. I reached into my purse and pulled out a single item, my keys. The brushed steel caught the morning light. "What's that?" my dad asked. "The keys to my apartment," I said. "I closed on it last week. 2-bedroom condo in Boston. Hardwood floors, built-in smart security system, fully paid off." The room went silent. "You bought an apartment?" My mother blinked. "With what money?" "My job," I said. "My company licensed a security framework I built. The bonus was $160,000 after taxes." Forks paused mid-air. Grant's jaw twitched. Mia stopped smiling. My dad leaned forward. "You've been making that kind of money?" "For years." My mother's tone shifted instantly. "Sweetheart, why didn't you tell us? We're so proud of you." Proud? For a moment, I almost laughed, but I didn't. "I should pack," I said instead. "I've got a long drive back." They protested. My mother begged me to stay for brunch. My father said we hadn't even talked about my exciting career. But I had seen enough, and they had shown me everything I needed to know. I came downstairs with my bag still unzipped and my resolve zipped tight. They were waiting for me, my parents, standing just beyond the threshold of the living room, arms folded, smiles too polished to be genuine. Grant and Mia flanked them, trying and failing to look casual. "Before you go," my father began, "we wanted to talk to you about something important." I raised an eyebrow. I didn't speak. I didn't need to. Grant stepped forward like a man doing me a favor. "This startup I've been building, it's really close to taking off. Just needs a little push. Capital mostly." "How much?" I asked. He smiled, cocky as ever. 200,000. That would get us rolling." My mother nodded eagerly. "It's an investment, honey. You'd be helping family." "Yeah," Grant added. "With what you're making, it's nothing. You said you got that big bonus, right?" And there it was. The reason they suddenly remembered I existed. I looked around that room, the same room where I used to sit on the floor while Grant opened his brand new gadgets and I got thrift store cast-offs. The same room where not 24 hours ago they forgot to get me a Christmas gift. "No," I said plainly. It landed like a slap. My mother's face froze. "What do you mean, no?" "I mean, I'm not giving you $200,000, or $2, or 2 cents. "But we're family," my dad said, like the word still meant something. I laughed, just once. Not bitterly, just truthfully. "You mean now we're family?" Silence. "Where was that family?" I continued. "When I asked for help covering textbooks and you told me to take out loans? When you turned my bedroom into an office before I even left for college? When you told me I could sleep on the couch while Grant got a car and a tuition check?" "That was different," my mother snapped. "Things were tight back then." I nodded slowly. "But not tight for Grant." "He showed promise," she said too quickly, then backpedaled. "I mean, we thought college might not be the right fit for you." "No," I said. "You just assumed I wasn't worth the risk." Grant stepped forward, puffed up like he was still wearing a high school Letterman jacket. "Unbelievable. You make it big and suddenly think you're better than us." "I don't think I'm better," I said. "I think I'm finally done pretending we were ever equal." "You selfish brat," he spat. "After all we've done for you." "For me?" I snapped. "You mean tolerating me while worshiping Grant? You mean throwing jokes at my expense at every dinner table? You mean forgetting me every holiday and pretending it was some innocent slip-up?" My mother's voice was shrill now. We gave you a roof, food. Parenting, I said coldly. Not charity, and you made sure I knew I was never wanted. My hand tightened around my suitcase handle. I turned toward the door. Don't walk out like this, my dad said. We're just trying to build something. You already did, I replied. You built a hierarchy, and I just stopped trying to climb it. I stepped outside into the cold, crisp air. Behind me, they shouted after me, about regrets, about forgiveness, about family. None of it mattered. By the time I hit the highway, my phone was buzzing every few minutes. Missed calls, voicemails, texts from numbers I didn't recognize but knew too well. Words like ungrateful, selfish, cold, flung like confetti at a party I'd never RSVP'd to. At a gas station just past the state line, I scrolled through them all, then blocked every number I didn't care to hear from again. Except Sarah. When I got back to my apartment in Boston, it was quiet, peaceful. I poured a glass of wine and stood by the window, watching the skyline blink like the city was breathing with me. Sarah texted, Mom's telling everyone you refuse to help, that you've changed. Good, I replied. Maybe now they'll stop pretending I ever owed them anything. A day later, the cousins came. Family is everything, one message read. You should support your brother. Delete, block. Another said, Wow, you're cold. Maybe, but cold is what you become when you're tired of being burned. It's been 7 months since that Christmas. 7 months since I walked out of the house where I was raised and never looked back. Since then, life hasn't just moved forward, it's unfolded. I was promoted in March, head of engineering. The title didn't matter as much as what came with it. A team that respects me, creative freedom, and a compensation package that would have made my teenage self think I was dreaming. That same month, I met Elliot at a tech conference in Cambridge. He was quiet, like me, but steady. A freelance designer who understood the chaos of startups and, more importantly, the silence that follows a toxic family. We got coffee, then dinner. Then we didn't stop. Elliot doesn't ask for pieces of me I'm not willing to give. He doesn't try to fix me. He sees me, and that's enough. Sarah still calls every week, not because she has to, but because she wants to. She keeps me updated, though I rarely ask. Apparently, Grant and Mia are still living with my parents. The startup never got off the ground. The story my family tells now is simple. I abandoned them. I turned my back. I let money ruin me. It's easier, I guess, than admitting the truth. I was never theirs to lose. They tried reaching out through every channel, old friends, distant cousins, even former teachers. I blocked each attempt, each guilt trip disguised as concern. My mother left a voicemail a month ago. Her voice trembled as she said, Family is forever, Celandine. I didn't respond. Because I've learned, forever only applies when it's mutual, not when it's conditional, not when it only kicks in once you've become useful. Elliot and I are planning a trip to Japan. We've been learning the language together, bookmarking noodle spots and old shrines. Sometimes, when we talk about the future, he asks what I'd name a dog if we got one, or if I'd ever consider leaving Boston for good. The thought doesn't scare me, not anymore. This city gave me space to grow. But now, I know that what mattered wasn't the city, it was me. I've stopped mourning the family I never really had. And I've started building something better, something chosen, something whole. To anyone listening who's felt the sting of being overlooked, forgotten, dismissed, please hear me when I say this. You do not have to stay where you're unseen. You are not selfish for choosing peace, and you don't need anyone's permission to live the life you deserve. So walk away if you need to, run if you must. Build a life that reflects your worth, not their expectations. Because the truth is, sometimes the most powerful thing you can say isn't I forgive you. It's, I'm done. And when you say it like you mean it. Because peace isn't found in their acceptance. It's found in your own. They didn't even bother to hide it this time. The text came at 9:13 a.m. from my older brother, Grant. "Don't come to Dad's birthday. You're an embarrassment. If I see you near the venue, I'll call security. Hi, I'm Sarah Langford, eldest daughter of Victor Langford, CEO of Langford Motors, and public family disgrace since the day I turned down a corner office and six-figure salary to go play engineer. They said I was wasting my name, squandering my chances, throwing away a legacy built by generations. What they never asked was what I'd been building instead. I looked up at the framed magazine cover hanging above my desk. Forbes Tech, Eden Rhodes, the silent force behind the EV revolution. They didn't know Eden Rhodes was me. Sarah Langford, working under my mother's name, had built one of the most disruptive clean energy startups in the country, without help from any Langford. And now, on my father's 65th birthday, the world would finally know who Eden Rhodes really was. Not because I wanted revenge, but because it was time the people who dismissed me learned that silence isn't weakness. Sometimes, it's just the sound of something powerful being built. Tonight, I wasn't just crashing a party. I was rewriting the story they tried to erase me from. The call from Everett Hale came just after dawn, crisp and to the point. "We're set for the announcement tonight. The Langford board has no idea it's Eden Tech that's taking over the partnership, and I'd like you to be there, Sarah, in person." My heart didn't race. It didn't need to. I'd spent too long preparing for this. "You know I'll be walking into a firestorm," I said quietly. "Which is exactly why you should walk in first," he replied. "Let them burn!" I laughed. Not because it was funny, but because there was something poetic in the way this moment had found its way back to me, through the front door they once slammed shut. It wasn't about vengeance. Not really. I didn't need them to suffer. I just needed them to see who I'd become without their permission, without their money, without their validation. That afternoon, I stood in front of my closet. No designer dress, no diamonds, just a fitted black sheath, low heels, and my mother's necklace. Still etched, still gleaming. I clipped my badge from the Eden Tech lab inside my purse. If anyone asked, it was my shield, my proof. On the way to the Langford estate, I thought about the last time I'd seen my father face to face. He'd told me, "You're not built for this world, Sarah. Not tough enough, not sharp enough." I was 24. I had nodded, not because I believed him, but because I knew nothing I said then would change anything. That was the last time he'd looked me in the eye. Since then, I'd become invisible. Until tonight. I arrived just before sunset. The Langford mansion was glowing gold with string lights and laughter, music drifting across the wide lawn. Servers carried flutes of champagne and hand-carved hors d'oeuvres to people wearing tailored suits and curated smiles. I paused at the entrance where my name, my family name, was engraved into the archway. It hadn't felt like mine in years. At the check-in table stood Mara, my half-sister, all gloss and blonde ambition, dressed in something tight, holding a champagne glass like it was part of her birthright. Her eyes widened when she saw me. "Sarah?" she said, confused and defensive in the same breath. "You're not on the guest list." "No," I said calmly, handing over a card. "But Mr. Everett Hale called ahead. I'm expected." She scanned the name, Eden Rhodes. I watched the blood drain from her face. "Eden. You're Eden Rhodes?" I didn't answer. I didn't need to. She stumbled over her words, tapping on her earpiece, trying to call someone. Grant, probably. But I was already walking inside. The room was full. Investors, journalists, board members. And in the center of it all, my father, standing under a banner that read, "Happy 65th, Victor Langford," beaming like the king of an empire. He hadn't seen me yet. But he would. And I was done being invisible. I didn't rush. I walked slowly, deliberately, past couples clinking glasses and board members whispering about stock projections, until I reached the edge of the ballroom. I blended just enough. Simple dress, practiced posture. But the energy shifted around me. People noticed. They just didn't know why. Not yet. Grant spotted me first. He froze mid-conversation with a VP from Halcyon Motors. his face hardening as a recognition set in. His eyes narrowed, his jaw flexed. He cut across the room like a missile. "You were told not to come," he hissed, voice low but tight with fury. "Good evening to you too, Grant." I sipped champagne. "You're looking very predictable." "I'm calling security," he snapped, reaching into his pocket. "No need," I said, glancing toward the main entrance. "Mr. Hale should be here in about 1 minute. He personally invited me." Grant stopped. The arrogance drained into uncertainty. "Everett Hale?" he asked, incredulous. "Why would he—" He didn't finish, because just then the music shifted. Everett Hale entered. No fanfare, just presence. The kind of presence that silences a room without raising a word. 60 years old, tailored gray suit, silver hair, and sharper eyes than any executive I'd ever met. He walked past the buffet, the bar, the mingling elite, and made a beeline, toward me. Victor Langford, catching sight of him, surged forward, hand extended. "Mr. Hale!" he boomed, voice slick with charm. "It's an honor." Everett didn't stop, didn't shake, didn't glance. He walked right by my father, straight to me. "Miss Rhodes," he said with a smile, extending his hand, "it's a privilege to finally meet you in person." The silence cracked like glass. I took his hand. My father stared, first in confusion, then dawning realization, then horror. Mara dropped her glass. It shattered across marble. Claudia gasped. Grant was still frozen, half reaching for his phone like it could save him. "You're Eden Rhodes?" Victor finally managed, voice small. "You're her." I turned to him. "No, I'm your daughter. Sarah Langford. Eden Rhodes is the name I built when no one wanted mine." The words hit harder than any slap. Everett gave me space. He could feel what this moment was. Victor stumbled back. "You built Eden Tech?" "Yes." "The battery patents, the EV platform, the new thermal shielding tech?" "All mine." Grant found his voice. "You've been doing this while we thought you were—" "Floundering?" I finished for him. "That's what you all assumed, right? That I walked away and failed?" Victor was shaking his head. "Why didn't you tell us?" "Because you didn't ask. Because when I tried 5 years ago, you told me to learn real business. So I did, just not from you." Everett stepped in gently. "Shall we proceed?" Victor turned sharply. "Proceed with what?" Everett's voice was calm but firm. "With the announcement. Eden Tech is acquiring a controlling stake in Langford Motors. Miss Langford will assume the role of CEO, effective immediately." Murmurs rippled through the crowd like electricity. Claudia rushed forward. "Victor, you can't let this happen. She'll destroy everything." "I'm saving it," I said flatly. "Your legacy is sinking. Sales are down. Innovation stalled. Langford Motors has 3/4 left max before bankruptcy. What I'm offering is not revenge. It's rescue." Victor looked at Everett, pleading. "You can't do this." "I already did," Everett said. "But it was her condition. Langford gets first rights before we take this to your competitors." Grant barked. "She's bluffing." I pulled up my phone and opened a secured folder. Full patent filings, tech demos, third-party validations. The room fell back into silence. Victor stepped forward slowly, eyes flicking between the screen and my face. This is real?" "Yes," I said quietly. "And it always was. You just never looked close enough." He nodded once, like something inside him had given way. "Where do I sign?" I reached into my bag and handed him the folder Everett had given me earlier. The pen clicked loud as thunder in that hushed room. He signed. Grant stormed out, muttering curses. Claudia turned away, livid. Mara just stood there, mouth slightly open, mascara starting to smear. Everett raised a glass. "Ladies and gentlemen, please welcome the new CEO of Langford Eden Technologies, Miss Sarah Langford." Some clapped, some whispered, some stared. But none of them could look away, and none of them would ever forget this moment. After the announcement, the room slowly resumed motion, but nothing felt the same. The music was still playing, the drinks still flowing, but the energy had shifted. I could feel it in the way people avoided my eyes or stared a moment too long, searching for the Sarah Langford they thought they knew. Victor lingered by the bar, dazed. His hands trembled slightly as he sipped from a now warm glass of bourbon. I watched him silently, letting him sit with the weight of what just happened. He wasn't the only one unraveling. Claudia approached, sharp as ever. "You've humiliated him," she hissed. "On his birthday, in front of everyone." "I gave him a lifeline," I replied coolly. "In front of everyone." "He built this company from nothing." "No," I corrected. "He inherited it from his father, then nearly ran it into the ground while ignoring the future." She opened her mouth, but I stepped closer. "Claudia, this was never about you. You married into a legacy. I built one." Her jaw tensed, but she didn't argue. Behind her, Grant reappeared, flushed with anger. "You think you've won, but this won't last," he spat. "The board will never follow you. You don't know the industry. You don't know us." "I know exactly what I'm doing," I said. "And I know what I'm not doing, asking for your approval. You could have come back years ago, joined us. We would have made room." "No, Grant, you would have made excuses, like you always do." He turned to Victor, looking for backup. "Dad." Victor raised a hand. "Enough." It was quiet, but it landed like thunder. Grant stopped, stunned. Claudia looked at her husband like she didn't recognize him. Victor faced me. "I was wrong," he said. Just that. No stammering, no performance. Just those 3 words. Then he added, "About you, about everything." "I know." He looked older now, smaller somehow. "I should have listened. You tried to show me. I wouldn't even look." "You told me to stop playing engineer and learn business," I said gently. "So I did." He let out a hollow laugh, then covered his face for a moment. When he looked up, his eyes were wet. "Can you forgive me?" I didn't answer right away. The silence stretched. Eventually I said, "That depends. Are you willing to learn from me now?" He nodded. And in that moment, I believed him. This wasn't about power anymore. It was about rebuilding something, on my terms. Later, when the crowd began to thin, I stood alone at the edge of the terrace, the cool night air brushing against my skin. Everett joined me, silent for a while. "You handled that well," he said eventually. "I wasn't sure I would." "I was." I turned to him. "Why'd you take the risk? Partnering with me before you even knew who I really was?" He smiled. "Because I didn't care about your name. I cared about your mind. The rest just made the story better." We clinked glasses. No toasts, no promises, just mutual understanding. Inside, the Langfords were still reeling. Outside, I was finally breathing. I arrived at Langford Motors the next morning just after 7. The halls were quiet, still echoing with the remnants of last night's disruption. My name badge now read Sarah Langford, CEO, and the receptionist barely blinked as she waved me through. Everything looked the same, but nothing felt familiar. The executive wing was oddly silent. Grant's office was dark, its contents already stripped away. Claudia's immaculate space was empty too, save for a lingering trace of expensive perfume. They hadn't just packed up, they'd retreated. I stopped in front of the CEO's office, once my father's sanctum. 5 years ago, I wouldn't have dared touch the doorknob, but now the door opened with a quiet assurance. No key, no guards, no permission needed. The office was filled with light. Morning sun poured through the tall windows, warming the wood grain of the desk where countless decisions, some brilliant, some disastrous, had been made. I stood still for a moment, just breathing it in. This wasn't a throne, it wasn't a prize. It was a place to build. A small, unmarked box sat at the center of the desk. I opened it slowly. Inside was a well-worn engineering textbook. The spine cracked softly in my hands, pages yellowed, cover softened by time. My heart caught in my chest as I recognized it. My mother's. I flipped to the inside cover, and there it was. In her familiar looping script, for Sarah, who will change the world her own way. Eleanor Rhodes Langford. I closed the book and held it to my chest. She had always seen something in me the others didn't. Not a replacement, not a disappointment, just possibility. And here, in this office they never thought I'd belong to, she was still the voice that mattered most. I placed the book on the center shelf behind me. No awards, no framed press clippings, just that one artifact, quiet, certain. Through the window, I watched a crew mount the final letters onto the glass sign outside. Langford Eden Technologies. It was more than a merger of names. It was a declaration. The future wouldn't be inherited, it would be created. I didn't feel victorious. I felt aligned. They had tried to shut me out, convinced the best way to control me was to ignore me. And still, I rose. Not out of spite, but out of purpose. The past was behind me. The work was ahead. And for the first time in years, I wasn't chasing anything. I was exactly where I was supposed to be. That evening, I found my father in the prototype lab. Not his office, not the boardroom. The lab. He was sitting on a stool, staring at one of the early Eden Tech battery models. Casing half open, notes scribbled around it. He didn't hear me walk in. "I remember when you used to laugh at my sketches," I said gently. He looked up slowly. "I wasn't laughing at the work. I was afraid of what it meant if you were right." I leaned against the table beside him. "You didn't want a daughter who proved you wrong?" I didn't want to admit I'd spent a lifetime ignoring the smartest person in the room. It wasn't an apology, but it was something real. "I found Mom's book," I said, "in my office." His eyes softened. She used to carry that everywhere, said it reminded her that ideas were more important than approval. I smiled. "Sounds like her." "I think she would have been proud," he added, voice low. I looked at him, really looked, and for the first time I didn't feel anger. I just saw a man who'd finally begun to understand what he'd missed. "I'm not asking you to fix what's broken," I said. "That's not your job anymore. But if you want to help build what's next, there's space for that." He nodded. "I'd like that." We sat in silence for a few minutes, just listening to the quiet hum of the machines that would soon carry the technology I once pitched to a room that laughed me out. Sometimes revenge comes in the form of rage, but sometimes the most powerful revenge is transformation. Not loud, not cruel, just undeniable. I didn't destroy the people who tried to erase me. I outlived their narrative, and now I was writing my own. A week later, I stood before the entire staff at our first all-hands meeting under the new name, Langford Eden Technologies. Our tagline gleamed across the back wall, "Powering the future built from truth." No one clapped because they had to. They clapped because they believed. As I stepped down from the stage, I caught my reflection in the glass, my mother's pendant glinting at my throat, the same steady look in my eyes that she once wore when no one listened to her either. The circle hadn't closed. It had evolved, and I was just getting started.